Everybody, welcome to House Higher Ed Budget. And today we do have a full schedule. And we have the community colleges, Washburn, and then also the independent private colleges. So I would say we're going to try for about 30 minutes for each one, just so you know. I mean, maybe we should say 20 minutes. So keep that in mind, or 25 minutes, keep that in mind. And then, but leave time for questions, because I think we definitely will have questions, and we appreciate you all being willing to, we had to change a few things around this week because of civic duties of jury duty and things, which is always great to do. I don't know if y'all have, but you get called, I highly recommend doing it. Okay, so we're just going to get started, and we're going to begin with Heather Morgan to give us the budget hearing on the community colleges. She's the executive director of Kansas Association of Community Colleges. So Heather, if we have questions, we may interrupt in the middle, or if you'll leave time, but then we'll try to wrap up, right around like 2.
I don't think we'll have a problem with time. So, and feel free to interrupt as I go. I'm Heather Morgan. I'm the executive director of the Kansas Community College Association, and I'm just going to jump into my testimony and hopefully keep everyone on the correct page. The first chart in the testimony that I've provided you is actually the head count from the 19 community colleges on the 20th day fall preliminary count. Wanted to point out that after the pandemic decrease of last year, we're up about 4.5% in head count. Specifically wanted to point out Dodge City Community College is up 18.7%. The reason that is up so much is because they've started some new technical programs and also have some new initiatives tapping into the Hispanic population in Dodge City. Dodge City, Garden City, and Seward Community College are all minority serving institutions. Over half of their students are minorities. I also wanted to point out that though we've served 60,000 students this fall, the number of students that we serve through customized training are not included in these charts. So Johnson County Community College does just about as much customized training as they do for credit. And that's another big part of what we do, meeting the needs of the businesses in our community. Okay. I will try to do, but I will not use my coaching voice. I will try not to do that. No problem. The second slide on page 3 shows the number of full-time equivalent head counts by the state universities in the upper left. So you can see the state universities served 106,000 students in 2021. If you look at the chart on the right, though, 76,000 of those 106,000 were undergraduate students. Wanted to point out on the chart at the lower left, Kansas Community College served 95,000 undergraduate students. So our community colleges actually serve more undergraduate students than our state universities. And then you see the number of undergraduates for our technical colleges, about 15,000. I think that because we have colleges spread out across the state, sometimes the breadth and scope of our colleges get a little bit lost. And these numbers do not include the private institutions or Washburn, which you'll hear from soon. Going to the next slide, 82% of Kansas Community College students are part-time. They're either working or taking care of their family while they're going to school. About 82% of our students are from the state of Kansas, and about half of our students are associate degree seeking. So they intend to go on to a baccalaureate or a more advanced degree, while the other half of our students are seeking short-term credentials or even a 2-year certificate technical education program. Moving to the next slide, you can see that the demographics of Kansas Community College students are generally a little older than technical college students and certainly university students. We only serve about 5% of students under the age of 18. The first chart across the top is community colleges. The one on the below is technical colleges. So our students tend to be a little older. They might have gone out to a 4-year university or come back, or they might have gone into the workforce and now are coming back for additional education. Moving on to the next slide, which is page 6. This chart illustrates the success of our graduates who are going on and transferring to a state university. You can see that our transfer GPA, is 3.0 or better. Generally, our students perform better at the universities than a native student. So we're really proud about taking our students, giving them the skills and confidence to succeed, and then transferring to the four-year university. I know transfer and articulation is one of the things that some of the members of the committee have asked about, and I wanted to highlight two amazing transfer programs we currently have. One is at Fort Hays, and it was just started this fall. Fort Hays now transfers our students who are graduates as a junior standing. That means that students are not retaking the class, and they're more likely to complete their degree in 4 years. We also have the same arrangement with a number of the private colleges. So we hope that the rest of the Regents universities might jump on the board of Fort Hays and allow our students to transfer with junior standing to make sure that they don't lose credit hours. The next slide outlines the tuition and fees if a student was taking 15 credit hours. So you can see that all 19 community colleges has slightly different tuition and fee structures. They're highlighted in the yellow in the chart. The state universities are in the blue. On the right side, you can see the cost if you took 15 credit hours a semester to complete a bachelor's degree, the cost for an associate's degree at a technical college, and then the average cost of an associate's degree at a community college. You can see that the community college option is the least expensive option, and what we believe is the most value for the student's dollar. If a student starts with us and completes their associate's degree, they will save $10,000 on a bachelor's degree education. We think that that value is important and allows students the flexibility to learn close to home. You turn to the next slide. Kansas community colleges serve a tremendous amount of Pell Grant students. So a Pell Grant is generally for students whose families are lower income. And you can see that the number and percentage of Pell Grant students by institution on the table below. So for example, Independence is our highest percentage of Pell Grant students in the 30s. The next one would be Neosho County at 31%. So 31% of Neosho County students are getting some sort of Pell Grant. If you skip over a few columns to the next column that has percentages in it that says percent of total students receiving a full Pell, you can see that 24% is the highest, and again, that's at Independence. So that means that those students' families cannot afford to contribute anything to their education. Their education is being fully covered by the federal Pell Grant. I also included the average student loan per institution. In the chart, you can see that the average student loan is about $4,400. We're proud that the student loan default rates across the higher education system in Kansas are generally very low, much lower than other states. The universities have only a 4.8% student loan default rate, community colleges 9.4%, and technical colleges 10.4%. So generally, our students are being responsible and paying back any loans that they do receive. Going to the next slide. These slides are talking specifically only about high school student enrollment. So on the upper left, this is the number of high school students that were served by community colleges in 2021. So we served 21,000 high school students. You can see the university served about 1,800, might be 1,600, my glasses. 1,600 high school students, and the technical colleges served about 8,200 students. So we are working with high school students every day to get them a jump start on their college and career experience. We also have early college programs at Butler and a number of other institutions that seek to try to graduate a high school student with a diploma and an associate's degree or certificate. If you skip ahead to the next slide, which is page 10, our list of the most enrolled in colleges for college courses for high school students. So you can see English Comp 1, College Algebra Comp 2. Those are the courses that we are mostly delivering, and this we being the entire Kansas higher education system to high school students. At the far right, you can see the success rate. All of these courses have over 90% pass rate for high school students. So this is a tremendous benefit to students and families in keeping the cost of higher education low if they're able to get some of these things out of the way while they're in high school. Moving on to the next slide, page 11. These numbers are really important as in relation to student success. So it's one thing to get the student enrolled in the course. It's another thing to measure how are the students doing after they leave the course or the instruction that we're providing. So you can see for all high school courses in 2017, because there's a little bit of a lag rate, 76% were successful. But then people taking concurrent and dual credit courses were 81% successful. And then if they took a Senate Bill 155 class or Excel in CTE, 72%. And then down below, you can see the technical colleges success rates. We know statistically across the nation, students who take a college class while still in high school are generally more successful, and those numbers bear out here. I wanted to also mention on-time graduation rates. This assists in making sure students graduate on time. Kansas community colleges have 51% of our students that graduate on time. Given how many part-time students we have, that's a pretty high number. Going to the next slide. This chart shows the number of technical education courses, number of students enrolled in technical education courses at each institution, and then the percent of the total enrollment that is technical education. So 20% of Johnson County Community Colleges enrollment is technical education students. Kansas community colleges provide 78% of the technical education in the state. Sometimes in the building, people get confused about, well, what's the difference between a community and technical college? There's some funding differences and some athletics differences and dorms differences, but community colleges are doing 80% of the tech ed in the state. And so I just want to make sure everyone's clear about that. The next slide is talking about Senate Bill 155 on page 13. As this committee, I'm sure, remembers the history of Senate Bill 155, sometimes it's fully funded and sometimes it's not so much. You can see the bar chart at the bottom that KBOR prepared, that last year the appropriation exceeded the usage because of pandemic enrollment decline. The governor has included additional funding for Senate Bill 155 this year in the budget, and we think that enrollment will rebound and hopefully that will fully fund Senate Bill 155. The next slide, on slide 14, this is again a look at technical education across Excel and CTE and our adult students across the different technical programs. So for example, if you look at health science, between the associate's degree and short-term certificates, we offered 12,000 students healthcare education. You can see the different students who are declaring a major or concentrating in these areas, and then the average wage of graduates who have been exited and employed and the median wage. You can see from this chart that there are a number of very high wage, high demand careers in technical education. And these are also the areas that the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act is focused upon. So that we have high wage, high demand occupations and Kansas students going into those occupations and then hopefully staying in Kansas. I think Representative Wassinger will be very happy with my next few slides. I've heard her ask about remedial education a few times, and President Flanders presented some information about developmental education to a House committee this summer. Page 15, page 16, and page 17 break down remedial enrollments by institution. So Kansas community colleges do the vast majority of remedial education. And I want to say a couple of things that have changed about remedial education in the past few years. So prior to the past few years, there was usually one test or one score that if you didn't score above that score, you're in remedial education. We've now instituted what we call multiple measures. So we go look at a high school GPA, maybe the AccuPlacer score or an ACT score. And so through looking at all of those different measurements of academic readiness, if the student doesn't score well on all of those things, then they might need to be in developmental education. So the percentage of developmental education is actually coming down a little bit because we've opened the door slightly. The other thing that we have implemented is something called co-requisite remediation. So if a student comes in and needs remediation in math, then rather than taking the 3-hour college algebra class, they may take a 5-hour class. And so what that means is they have the normal class, and on Tuesday and Thursday, they have to go to an hour of tutoring. That's a far better way to help the student progress towards their degree, because if they're in intermediate algebra, that may not count towards their degree path. And so then they're going to have to take another math class. And statistics nationally show if they're just in a normal developmental class, their success rate is not very good. So we're trying to encourage all programs at all of our institutions to look at co-requisite remediation. So skip ahead to slide 18. looks like this. Doesn't have the stars on it. This is, I think, to the point of Representative Wassinger's question. The KBOR graciously ran the remedial education, developmental education numbers through the cost model. And I think you heard yesterday the cost model doesn't cover everything. But according to these numbers, the community colleges spent at least $8.2 million on developmental education. I will tell you the number is much higher than that because that wouldn't necessarily include all of the tutoring and support services and some of the other things we have in place. But I wanted to provide you this that Dr. Flanders provided to the committee this summer because I think Representative Wassinger gets to some of your questions.
Hey, just quick, we're on page 18.
Yep.
Where did you get that?
One down on the very right side.
Okay, got it. Yep, thank you.
The next slide on page 19 shows the percent employed and the average wages of community college and technical college graduates. So the community college graduates are slightly lower because if they transfer to a four-year degree or onto a master's program or a doctoral program or law school or med school, those numbers are going to be a little bit lower. But you can see that these jobs that are very short-term training pay very good wages. The next slide, which is on page 20, has the logo of the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act at the top. Kansas community and technical colleges and private colleges and the Board of Regents did a Herculean effort this summer. You all passed the bill in May, and by July 1, we were awarding Kansas Promise scholarships. So through November, 663 Kansas Promise scholarships were awarded. 151 of those were in advanced manufacturing and building trade careers. 376 of those were in physical and mental health, and then 75 were in information technology. We know that the average awards, I think for the community colleges, were about $1,700, which that is a last dollar scholarship. So that means after the cost of tuition, fees, books, and supplies, there was only $1,700 left in terms of what needed to be paid off. Skipping ahead to the next slide on page 21, you can see the amounts of money that were awarded for the Kansas Promise Scholarship. We are not going to use the $10 million this year. We're probably going to use around $5 million. But we do expect it to grow next year as we have a year of marketing in place. And there is also a trailer bill coming through. Hopefully it'll be on the Senate floor next week that'll come over to House Commerce that will make some tweaks to make this work better for everyone. The next slide is slide 22. And the next few pages after that just highlight some of the business and community partnerships that we have. So whether you think about a police officer, a firefighter, a plumber, a building contractor, a mental health worker, we have partners with all of those sorts of businesses. I've heard somebody already asked today, it might have been an appropriations committee about, well, what are you all doing related to the behavioral health workforce? We've been working with the Community Mental Health Center Association, beginning talks about what would a less than a bachelor's degree social worker or mental health type position look like? Would that help the community mental health centers? How might that fit into this new CCBHC model? That's what we do. Industry comes to us. We say, what do you need? And then we try to create that training. Our community colleges will be involved in nearly any economic development deal that the state is involved in, training the workers that they need to be successful. We've also had our colleges work really hard to find public-private partnerships and other money that is not state money to do what they need to do. Garden City Community College and Fort Hays State University, for all intensive purposes, have an affiliation. They are affiliated because they are sharing. Fort Hays is on Garden City's campus. Fort Hays has their advisors at Garden City Community College and other technical college or other community colleges to help the students make sure that they articulate well to Fort Hays and are successful there. So you can see that they've got a STEM grant that will create a hub serving the Hispanic population in Garden City, but also creating separate labs for chemistry, biology, also maintenance and industrial technology to serve the food processing plants there. Independence Community College received a Rural Prosperity and Economic Development grant to really reach out to high schools. And these are all things that have just happened in the last quarter because I couldn't possibly handle more than that. Cloud County Community College has been selected to be an FAA drone training facility, which is a great honor for their drone program that is not solely focused with their wind energy, but really also works with the power companies and other industries like ag to be able to fly the drones. Labette Community College is doing mock crime scene interviews to hopefully create some workforce for the KBI that I know is having such a hard time hiring people. Cali County is partnered with the CanPAC, which is a local company to try to funnel their students directly to that business. Both Coffeyville and Cloud have been chosen as finalists for the Aspen Community College Award. That's the premier award in the country. Coffeyville did not advance to the next round, but Cloud is still in the running through the next round of competition for the Aspen Community College Award. Hutchinson has a partnership with Idea Tech, which is spreading broadband through our rural regions of our state. Fort Scott is working with their construction science students to build homes, as well as Dodge City Community College students that are building homes for Dodge City using the RHID program that you all passed last year to try to work on the housing shortage we have across the state. Neosho County Community College was awarded a $745,000 federal grant to partner with Southeast Kansas Works and the Chanute Regional Development Authority to create a 24,000 square foot innovation center in Chanute that'll serve both the aviation industry, but also anything in advanced manufacturing. Will provide the business development and support, and also the support for any job seekers in the area. Seward Community College has a partnership with Skyland Grain to build grain elevators to allow their grain elevator technology program to have a place to train on campus. So Seward will train people who go out and make sure that the elevators across the state are safe and clean and good for Kansas grain. I just wanted to highlight just a few of the things that have happened in the last 3 months across our colleges and highlight the partnerships that we have with business and industry. On slide 27, you can see that these are the total community college audited revenues. So we get about 37% of our funding from county and local appropriations, about 18% from the state, and about 16% from tuition and fees. And this was for fiscal year 19 audited numbers. Turn to the next slide. On page 28, this talks about our property taxes. And so according to the funding model for in-district students, which an in-district student is a student who is from the taxing county, so wherever the home base of the college is, that's the taxing county. The idea is that the local taxpayers are supporting a third of that cost, the state would support a third, and students would support a third. For students who are not from the taxing county but are from Kansas, it's a 2/3, 1/3 split. In the past 22 years, the average mill increase is 4.29, but you can see that that varies greatly across our schools. You can also see that the amount generated from the ad valorem taxes varies greatly. 9 mills in Johnson County brings in $92 million. 12 mills in Highland in Donovan County brings in $1.8 million. So that's a pretty big difference. And I included how much is generated from 1 mill. The lowest valuation in the state for our community colleges, 1 mill in Bourbon County, Fort Scott, generates $84,000. I didn't have room on the sheet, but if you were to divide this per student, the average taxpayer supported cost per student is $2,200. The median is about $1,700. If we were to look just at the individual schools, the highest is $4,400. And the lowest is $405 per student. On the next slide on page 29, you can see the different breakdowns of how we spend our money. So 33% is spent on instruction, 15.4 is on institutional support, 11.4 on student services, and 7.3 on academic support. I remember Representative Humphreys asked Chancellor Girard about what would this look like if you put the years next to each other, and I did look at that a little bit. They didn't change dramatically, but the interesting thing was, and probably not surprising, the percentage of expenditures on student services and academic support has increased. When we think about the mental health challenges some of our students are experiencing and the academic support related to remedial, that's one of the things. Jumping ahead to the budget on slide 30, the governor put in $24.5 million new dollars for community and technical colleges, $2.5 million for Senate Bill 155, $6 million for tiered and non-tiered, $1 million for capital outlay, and $15 million for one-time projects. Only 9 community colleges get any technical or capital outlay funding because they merged with a technical college a long time ago. If you turn to page 31, I know that yesterday when I wasn't able to be here, you all talked about the tiered and non-tiered formula and the gap. I'm going to try to review that again today as simply as possible and quickly. Red means you're overfunded, black means underfunded. Basically, if you were to fund the underfunded and tiered, it's 5 million. The underfunded and non-tiered, it's 15 million. And then you see the overpayment bounce below. Getting to the last page here on the slide is if you were to add the tiered gap and non-tiered gap together, you would get a combined gap. Again, red is overfunded, black is underfunded. So in order to fully fund the gap, it's about $17.8 million. Community colleges would recommend that you concur with the governor's recommendation and add the $6 million, add another $11.8 million to fully fund the $17.8 million gap, that people who are overfunded get no new money, that the proviso last year is adjusted to ensure that if people are overfunded, they get what they got last year, and that the new money only goes to people who are underfunded. We'd also request a work group over the summer with the technical colleges and KBOR to bring back some things next year for you to start recentering and put that in statute and make those statutory changes. The last thing I wanted to mention is the $195 million that's in the Department of Commerce budget for university matching grants. We are not eligible to even participate in that program, but we would like to be. The reason I was given was we couldn't bring a match. We can bring a match. We actually have, well, 16.2 million in projects that already have half a match. And then KCK has a very large project that's 30 million for a new downtown center that also has a match. So with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Okay, committee, let's quickly ask the questions. Anybody? Representative Riley, then Wassinger.
Heather, I'm sorry I can't speak as fast as you can. You just a blur. So mine through this whole thing has to do with housing. I didn't, you did a comparison of tuition against tuition with different ones. Housing was not factored into that as far as total costs of student costs for going to an institution. And I can understand that if I'm going to Colby and trying to find housing in Colby comparison to housing in Johnson County, it's going to be a lot easier and a lot difference in pricing. But starting clear back at your beginning slides, how does that affect things of total package of adding costs of housing and books, and et cetera?
That's a really good question. Some of our schools have dorms, some do not. Some have private dorms that are essentially owned by a private developer, and some do not. It would vary greatly by what the student chooses to do. And so to your point, their Pell Grant only is going to cover a certain amount, and they may or may not choose the lowest cost option. I could figure out what the average cost of living expenses in community college owned dorms is, but probably four colleges wouldn't be apples to apples because they have some sort of other odd living arrangement. Most of our dorms are pretty full, and colleges are looking at increased student housing. We have some colleges that have students in motels, quite frankly.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excuse me. Do you have any idea how much unencumbered funds the community colleges have?
I do. I look at unencumbered funds just like I'd look at my personal bank account. Do you have 6 months or a year of get laid off or whatever? We have 3 colleges who have more than 1 year of unencumbered balances. The highest is 19 months. And the reason that college has so much is because they have a 1968 building that's the main building on their campus, and they have no bonded indebtedness and they're saving. We have 9 colleges who have less than 11 months, 6 colleges with less than 6 months. 5 of those colleges are under 4 months, and we have 3 colleges who have less than 3 months of unencumbered cash balances in terms of what their monthly expenses are.
If I may.
Are you sharing who those are?
Well, I could. I don't have them on my paper, but I do have them on my computer. And I will just say that the people who are generally underfunded or overfunded on the table. There are at least 5 of them who probably could not take it. They would be there if they took their whole, if it was recentered in 1 year and they had to take their cut, they would be under 2 months of cash balances, which would not be a lot, which would not be probably the amount you would want. Mm-hmm. The other thing to keep in mind is in order for a college to be accredited, they have to hit a certain CFI score, and unencumbered balances factor into that.
Okay. Just a quick, the SB 155, is that, just to clarify, colleges don't charge high school students tuition for any technical, or is there some, threshold or something loop you have to go through to be considered Senate Bill 155?
Course is approved by the Board of Regents to be offered as a Senate Bill 155 course, colleges are prohibited from charging tuition.
Okay.
However, fees and supplies are a different matter.
Right. I understand that. Okay. Other questions? Anybody? Let's see. Heather. I'm sorry. Okay. Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question, just a quick comment. Heather, thank you for being here. Thank you for all of the data. I think that's why you're going to see less questions. Most institutions do. Sure.
Representative Riley.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I wanted to sort this out with Oklahoma. I know that when I was teaching, we had students that could go to Oklahoma and get in-state tuition at a community college, tech college. So just sort that. This was part of your slide 28, I think it was, the whole thing with being an active college and being able to get property taxes and that kind of stuff. So how have community colleges reacted to that competition where not only the out-of-state people or our people are going out of state and getting it very cheap? How do they react to that?
This is a little complicated. So all of our schools have generally a number of tuition rates, usually in district, which is much lower, the lowest, because the taxing county is supporting them. Then you may have in-state, and then you have out-of-state, and then a lot of people have international. What we charge for tuition is different than the cost model. If an out-of-state student is at a community college, for the cost model, they can't be considered an in-state student for funding purposes until they've at least lived in Kansas 6 months, and they have to legally change their residency. That's different than the tech colleges, who an out-of-state student counts for the funding formula on day 1. So the residency piece has 2 parts. 1 is what we charge for tuition, and 2 is how that impacts the funding formula. So to your point about how we react, that is something that each board of trustees is looking at very closely to see what their competitors are doing. Like in Johnson County's case, they're looking at Metro Community College on the Missouri side to say, how do our tuition and fees line up? But also, how do we make sure that our taxpayers are getting the lowest tuition for their students for what the contribution they're making to the college? So those are calculated, balance, and research. That actually happens about this time of year. They usually set tuition and fees for next year after a market study.
So basically what you're saying is you don't need help from policy on any of this to make a difference. The community colleges are doing their own marketing and adjusting their tuition to compete with out-of-state or international people so that we're keeping our people in state.
In terms of setting tuition and fees, our boards have that under control. In terms of this funding formula, that's a different question.
And last question, Representative Rajas.
Thank you. And I'm surprised nobody asked this. So explain, if you can, the next hour and a half.
2 minutes.
No. Okay. So you say, okay, so if we don't do recentering and we keep it the way it is, you have some schools getting over $1 million. Where does that money go then if they're overpaid by $1 million and you want to keep that overpayment for another year? So do they put it in an account somewhere? Do they utilize it? And then if we recenter that, I mean, kind of go through that process if we're going to look at it, because make sure we all kind of fully understand what that means.
Yeah. So if those people who are overfunded or keep flat to where they are this year with that overfunded amount, I would hope that their presidents would think, I'm going to be cut next year. My degree of cut, I don't know. That's what the work group would look at. And I need to plan ahead. Do I need to pay down my debts? What do I need to do to invest in efficiencies? Because being overpaid is ending next year. The matter is how much the overpayment is going to be and how many years to get to fully funded to zero. That's the question.
24.
24, yeah. Next year when we're here this time, we'll have statutory change.
I think it's something to think about as we have our discussions on Monday.
Absolutely. And I think it's been discussed for a long time. And I do sense that there's more will to change it than ever, hopefully. So,
First time in a decade, all 19 community colleges are in agreement that something must be done.
okay. Thank you, Heather. Really appreciate it. Okay. We will just go right into hearing about Washburn University. Dr. Farley is not able to be with us today. So we have the, don't tell me, you're the chief academic officer. Yes, thank you. And Dr. Julianne Mazachek. And welcome. Nice to see you again today. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, great. I don't have quite as much projection in my voice. So I'm very happy to be here though today. And I just want to say on behalf of Dr. Farley, I know that he misses being here. He wishes he was here. This is something that he takes great joy in, having these conversations with you and telling you about the wonderful things happening at Washburn. So some of you know this, but I've been at Washburn about 30 years in various roles. And so I truly hope I can answer all of your questions today. So I know you have written testimony. I am not going to go through that verbatim. However, I am going to use it as a guide for some things to talk with you about. And I will watch my time. I think it will take me probably about 20 minutes to go through. So just as a little bit of background, because I don't know if all of you know Washburn, and that is, we are located right here in Topeka, Kansas. We are the primary higher ed institution for Shawnee County and also for Northeast Kansas. And we are an open access institution. And we admit, and what does that mean? That means essentially if you graduate from a high school in Kansas, we have a spot for you in our seats at Washburn University, and that we're going to work with you no matter your background to find a way to the finish line of graduation. And we're very committed to that. That's been our mission since we were founded in 1865, and we have stayed true to that mission for all those years. We also, in 2008, we affiliated with a technical college, Washburn Tech, and they have been a part of our umbrella now for a number of years. And they provide technical education to high school students and to adult students, post-secondary students. About 1,300 students attend Washburn Tech. We also, I would say that they have served, not in addition to the Shawnee County area, they serve about 25 high schools in providing technical education with particular programs that might not be available in other places. And so over half of our population at Washburn Tech is high school students. And so we have a genuine interest in the discussion that you were just having. Although I think that we are fairly neutral in that discussion. So I thought I would take a few minutes right at the beginning and talk with you a little bit about how we're funded, because we do look different than the other four-year public institutions in the state. We really have a three-legged stool of revenue. And one of our legs, the very important leg, of course, is the state operating grant that we receive from all of you. And it represents, it's a little over $12.5 million, and it represents about 13% of our budget. And then we also, unique to I think any institution in the state, we also have a sales tax in Shawnee County that helps support Washburn University, not Washburn Tech, Washburn University. And it represents about 25% of our budget. And then the remainder is primarily composed of tuition. Those are our primary legs. So our tuition ends up being almost 50%. I know you see a net tuition number in there. But that is what our makeup is for our revenue. It's important to recognize that our Washburn Tech is separate. We do not, oh, I'm sorry.
Real quick, I'm just gonna, you're kind of
Yes.
speaking from, this section with the questions. So just if you're like me and it helps to have something to look at, that's on page 6.
It is, it's
Okay,
on,
I'm sorry. Thank
it's
you.
okay, page 6. And then on page 7 is the Washburn Tech. And you'll notice that they do receive through Senate Bill 155, your CTE funding. About 59% of their budget is from the state, from the state grants that come and the appropriations that come in that way. And then one of the things that is kind of hard to see in the way that we report is the work of our foundation. And I just wanted to spend just a moment about that. The foundation does support, and there are 2 primary ways that they support us. There's other ways too, but 2 primary. One is student scholarships annually that help students cover tuition costs. And then they do help us support capital projects. We do not receive any money from the state to build any buildings, to maintain any buildings, to do any of that. And so the foundation is a very important partner as we build and renovate buildings. I think you have a question.
Second. Sorry. Representative Riley.
I know my location is way, way away. So before we leave that slide, how much of that's tuition and scholarship money break down between the tech part and the university, or is it all university that we're looking at right here?
Okay, so we have them broken up separately. That's actually how we report them. So yes. And we're very careful. That was one of the things when we joined, when we affiliated, that we kept those 2 budgets distinct so that we could easily manage both.
So when the foundation is giving 28%, they're giving 28% to the university. They're not getting anything at the tech school.
So the foundation does help support the tech school, but it is not the primary. Most of their giving, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were asking about the foundation. The foundation does have both, but I would tell you that 95% of what they do affects the university. Yeah.
That would make a difference in the pie chart on the part of where that money is coming from for the tech college, because we just had our tech colleges here yesterday, and your pie chart for your tech colleges looks a whole lot better than what theirs did.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I would share also, when you look at this, we are very active in grants and we are very successful in that. And most of them come from the state of Kansas. We just are actually able to compete very favorably, and we receive a significant number of grants, and that helps us also. Thank you. Alrighty, just a quick word about student fees, and you'll notice that we're also unique in that way. We have very few student fees, and on the Washburn University campus, we have 1 fee for students that is $55. Every student pays it, and it's a pass-through, meaning we collect it on behalf of the students, and then the students give it away through student government. It doesn't actually go into the budget for the university. And then we do have some course fees at the university. We have only 6 course fees for 6 courses. And then, of course, at the technical college, those get reviewed every year through TEA. And we do have more course fees and supply fees there. Okay, and then I thought I would spend just a couple minutes talking about the COVID funds and that we received during these last 18, almost 24 months now. And I have to tell you that most of us in higher ed cannot imagine having to have navigate that time frame without having had those funds. Fortunately, it allowed us to continue our operations. We were not required to have layoffs or furloughs during that time because tuition, as I'm sure you're all very aware of, most of us experienced that some students decided not to go to college during COVID. And I would tell you, when we were spending our funds, that we were very careful to consider our students first, and then to make sure that we weren't investing in anything that would require us to have continuing funds, such that we'd have to come back to you and ask for money to support what we use the COVID funds for. And so we used almost half of our COVID funds for direct student aid, either through student grants to help them cover their tuition, or if they had special needs. We learned that some of our students didn't have access to technology because we have people of all different socioeconomic backgrounds. And so some of the things that we had to do related to those types of grants, very successful. Then we spent about 10% of the grants to retrofit some of our classrooms so that we could use distance learning, and to make sure we upgraded technology to facilitate distance learning. And that was very important. And then, of course, we had the opportunity to overcome some of our lost tuition and lost revenue that happened during COVID. And we did take advantage of that. And then yes, and those were, I just would say those were very helpful. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that we could not have survived without the funds that were provided in that way. The next thing I'd like to talk about is there are some building projects on here. I'm not going to talk about those only because unless you have questions, I'd be happy to. Those we do not receive any funds from the state for our buildings, and so most of those are funded through either surpluses that we develop over time, in addition to monies that we receive from donors. And so we do have some projects that are coming along, and we're very excited about that. I'd like to skip to enrollment, though, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Washington. Thank you, Madam Chair. I love that word, surplus. Does that mean?
No.
What exactly does?
I shouldn't have used that word, and my president would not have liked that I used that word. It just is the reality that sometimes in some years, no matter how well you budget, you have extra money. You've spent less than you've brought in. And so what we use that money for over time is to build buildings and to maintain our campus, and to make those types of investments, because we don't have any other monies for that purpose.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, now let me talk about enrollment for just a moment. And I'm sure you've heard everyone else speak to enrollment is challenging. The number of high school students are declining in our state. That is just a reality of people, just of birth rates. And we know that we're going to experience this for at least the next 10 years. And so we are all trying to navigate, how do we get ready for what that means? And also understanding that the high school students are just a part of the populations that we serve in the state. And that in addition to our traditional high school students, and especially for an institution that's located in kind of a metro urban area, we serve students beyond just high school students. And we have adult working professionals are a large part of who our student base is. We also are learning to reach out and identify populations that possibly have some college and are not yet complete, and figuring out and determining programs that we can offer to meet their needs so that they can upgrade their skills and perhaps their jobs and their readiness for other jobs and careers. And we also are doing something that might I know that you have heard about from others, and Heather mentioned it too. We are one of the partners working with the Kansas Department of Corrections on developing education for residents of correctional facilities. We have partnered both at the Washburn University and the Washburn Tech area to be able to offer programs to those to that population of students that we weren't serving before. And this was made possible because they can't pay tuition on their own usually, unless someone else sponsors them. The federal government passed the Second Chance Pell And that made it possible for us to be able to do that type of work. And so we're in the process of doing that. And why is that important work? I just would tell you that that is the number one way to prevent recidivism, and for people to be successful when they leave their correctional facilities. Education makes a huge difference. So we're looking for opportunities like that to expand our offerings in ways that possibly we haven't been able to do before. We are creating our articulations, and such as we are one of the leaders in the state for developing military articulations, and where you can use your training that you might have learned as you were serving in the military, and we have taken it and looked at what they learned there, articulated it to what our programs have, and identified what they get credit for. And we're very excited about that process and what that might mean for our military veterans. And we have a real commitment to rural. And one of the areas that we've created an outstanding program is in our rural law area. And we have developed an externship process whereby our students can go and serve in rural areas. We have received a significant grant from the Hansen Foundation to assist our law school in doing that, especially in the Northwest Kansas. And we have had tremendous success in not only having our students participate in that, but then our students choosing rural law as a profession. And so we're very excited about those things. One of the other things that we really do follow through on is we do have partnerships with high schools. And we talked about CEP, and you heard Heather talk about CEP, which is concurrent enrollment programs with high school students. We are the largest provider in four-year public institutions of CEP. We serve approximately 800 students a year through our concurrent enrollment programs. And we know that students leave their high school with already some of their college under their belt and ready to hit the ground running when they get to whatever their path is that they choose after high school, whether it's community college or a four-year institution or a tech school. And we've been very committed to continuing that, along with other programs that we've developed for our high schools in our area. I did skip over one thing I wanted to just share with you. We did receive maintenance of effort funds, and our MOE funds are being primarily directed towards enrollment initiatives. And we are using them to help us develop some of these programs, which I just spoke with you about, and to better be able to attract transfer students and to understand how we can identify new programs or new modalities, ways of delivering programs that would be more appealing to other students or to additional populations.
Will you remind me what the amount of that maintenance of effort?
We received about 1.2 million. And then, of course, Washburn Tech received a little over 600,000. And of course, Washburn Tech, those were supposed to be used for equipment, and that's what we are using it for, is for equipment.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and then just to talk a little bit about economic impact, I would share that we really do focus on Shawnee County and then Northeast Kansas. Around 90% of our students are from the state of Kansas, and then about 90% of them stay in the state of Kansas when they first are employed. All of our alumni, about 70% of them live in the state of Kansas. In Shawnee County, we have the largest number of those employed in Shawnee County come from Washburn University, not surprising. And we also are very active in our community and in making sure that we're working on developing the workforce that's needed by our business community. And we do that in ways that you're probably familiar with through advisory councils and ongoing relationships and conversations with our business partners. When we did an economic impact study Several years ago, the return that was estimated for the taxpayer investment was for Washburn about 9%, and for Washburn Tech almost 8%. Now, academics, I would like to talk about this part. With this, we've been very focused these last years. I've mentioned to you that we are open access, and that we take when students come to us, it is our true goal that we will find a pathway for them to get to graduation. We don't always know what that looks like. We don't always know what services they need to help provide that success all the way down the pathway. But we have been working on, really, we have about a four-legged stool for this. And we've been working diligently to improve our graduation rates, because in the end, what is most important? Not that a student comes, but that a student graduates. That's what's most important. And so we have, a lot of our students are part-time. Almost 90% of our students have a half-time to full-time job while they're going to school. Many of them pay their own way through school. And so this is why we thought it was just so important that we had to figure out this path. And so I'm going to talk with you about a couple of things we've done, but I'll give you the punchline first. We have increased, in the last 4 years, we have increased our graduation rate substantially by almost 20 percentage points for our 4-year graduation rate, and by 17 points for our 6-year graduation rate. So we're very thrilled about that. And it has been the result of a few things. And I heard you talking a little bit about remedial courses, and we have revamped all of our what you would consider remedial courses. And they are co-requisite, or actually we've just completely revamped how we teach, and we don't even have to have a co-requisite anymore. And so I will give you my example. Math was our biggest hurdle for our students, and it is for most students, no matter where they go. And when we started this process, we had students that their first time through their math course, that only about 43% of them were able to be successful. And they either got a D, F, or a W. And mostly we give W's, but D, F, or a W. Within 2 years, we reorganized our curriculum, and we changed how we support that through a tutoring. It's not required, but through a tutoring process, and it meets people where they are, so they can learn what they need to learn and don't have to relearn things they already know. And now we went from 43 to 73% of our students pass the first time they go through their math class. We're not finished, but we've made tremendous progress, and we consider that to be one of the most important things we've done. I don't know how many students you might run into that say, I'm almost done, I just can't get my math requirement done. Some of you may know some of those students. That's not all that odd. But we're very excited about that. And then we changed our advising and our coaching. We changed our intervention. We are very intrusive in intervening now, and faculty are very much a part of that. And we also purchased some technology that allows us to communicate readily with our students when they need it, at the time they need it. And so we're very excited about those outcomes. New programs. I will go down just a couple more. I talked to you about military correctional. I did want to share with you, one of the things that we're working on with high schools is trying to identify programs that can allow students to start along a career path when they're in high school. One of the things that is just recently accomplished is we have partnered with a local hospital and with our one of our school districts at their center, for their career center, and our Washburn Tech, and we are offering a CNA program, an opportunity for a pathway for students in high school to earn their CNA, which is their certified nursing assistant. And we're very excited about being able to do that. It's new. The students are still trying to figure out how that happens, but those students could graduate from high school with that already behind them. So we're very excited about that. And then finally, I would say student engagement. We are trying to learn how to re-engage students after COVID. COVID was a shock to most of us, and especially to our students. And they got they didn't, especially our freshman students and then our sophomore students. I mean, they've been with us a couple of years. They're not used to actually being involved in activities, going to things. They're not even used to our campus having a lot of activities. And so starting to get students to re-engage with each other and re-engage with the campus, we'll be very focused on making sure that we can do that going forward. And then finally, I'm just thank you for letting me present today, and I would love to stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Committee questions? Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was a question I was going to ask the community colleges, and so you get it also. But how do you engage? You were talking about your transfer credits from high schools. How do you engage with the students that are homeschoolers, giving them credit so that they can keep moving on? I'm not hearing that from any of our institutions, so I'm picking on you to start.
We actually have a large population of homeschoolers. Shawnee County is a large homeschooling population, and we have developed articulations so that those students can transition very easily. Actually, many of those students take classes at Washburn while they're being homeschooled, and that has worked very, very well. And they don't do it through our traditional concurrent enrollment. They come to our campus and take our courses, and we offer them at a price that's equivalent to our what we offer to high school students. So yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, and are you part of Senate Bill 155?
At
You are too.
Washburn Tech,
Okay,
yes.
yeah, Washburn Tech, right? Okay, okay. Any other questions, committee? I noticed in these questions you said about 20% of your classes are online now, and those would be the ones that were designed always to be online,
Yeah.
not classes that you've switched to be virtual.
Yes, that is absolutely true. We are back to some normalcy again. I don't think, though, that we'll ever get rid of hybrid classes, meaning where students like to maybe have some of it they do online and some of it they do in person. I think that there are certain classes that will stay that way, but that is not a result of COVID. Those are the 20% are classes that we would expect to see, and we're designed that way. I would share that we have a goal that we need to get to 25%. And the reason is that what we recognize is that there are some students and some programs that need to be online so that the populations that would have the interest in them can take those courses. And our example would be like a degree completion program where someone is working full time and they want to finish a degree. Most of those students prefer to have an online alternative. And so we'll be looking at what makes sense for adding online classes.
Okay, Representative Wassinger.
You used the acronym DFW.
I'm
Right
so
over
sorry.
my head. So could you explain?
Yes. So there are if the grades you get A, B, C, D, F, and then you can get a withdrawal. And so when we talk about us, and it's probably in some of the numbers that K-Board prepared for you, they will often show the DFW because people have to get a C to get credit for a course. And so sometimes that's how we talk about it, although it's not. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use an acronym.
I tend to ask a lot of people because they speak your own language, and sometimes I don't understand that language. So the other question that I've asked everybody is about how, and I'm sorry, I'm operating on probably about a tenth of the sleep I actually need. So I'm wondering how much you have unencumbered funds, and also did you address, and forgive me if it's in here and I missed it, the amount of percentage of what you do with your remedial? And I think you probably
So I don't think I gave you a percentage because I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can get that for you. We have very little what I would call remedial now. And so just because of how we've redesigned our programs, the only The only students that have to end up in some remediation are people who have usually been away from education for a long time.
Okay.
And so there's just things you get real rusty on. That's all it is. And so I can definitely provide that for you. And I heard you ask that question. I do not know the answer to what our total amount of unencumbered funds are, but we can get that for you. Yep, no problem.
Madam Chair.
Okay, any Representative Rajas, last
you.
question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we hear from the CEOs, but I think in your position, you may bring something unique. And so I'm going to ask, not necessarily a budgetary question, but you brought up COVID, and now we're almost to post-COVID. What have you learned? What are you taking from COVID in your role when it comes to academics and moving Washburn forward? And I think we've talked little bits and pieces, but is there some, not necessarily epiphany, but because Washburn is kind of a unique situation. So what are you taking over the last 2 years moving forward from an academic standpoint?
Such a great question. And I would say that we have come out on the other side, as I imagine most of the institutions in the state have. We've come out in a much better place than we were even when we went in. We learned so much from that, that I even don't like to use this word anymore, but from that quick pivot, we learned that we could do more than we ever thought we could do in a short amount of time. And we could bring people up to a certain level of understanding of technology and how to deliver education in a different way than just the traditional way. And we can't ever unlearn that we know how to do that now. And what we found out is that some of the things that we thought could never be taught a different way, we actually found better ways to teach them during COVID. And we had some areas where we had even greater student success, not in all areas. But what we learned is that what we're going to have to provide going forward is more of a spectrum of opportunities, modalities, programs, delivery models to appeal to all the different types of students who want to learn. And it's exciting because it's not just me who sees it, but the faculty see it too. And that's actually where the work happens. And so.
Yep. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Give our best to Dr. Farley, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. I'll call up Matt Lindsey, the president of the Independent College Association. Matt, do try to leave a few minutes for questions at the end, if you don't mind.
Happy to, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And I will. I am on. Light is red. See if this works a little better. I don't quite have the projection that Heather has either. Thank you all for flexibility and allowing me to appear today. And I will try to make mine brief in order to give a little extra time for questions. You have in your hands a couple of items from me, one of which is a book that looks like this. And I'll refer to that, pages in it a few times. That'll help keep track of where we are. So my name is Matt Lindsey. I'm the president of the Kansas Independent College Association. I work on behalf of the 20 accredited nonprofit colleges in the state. So that includes the two oldest colleges in Kansas, Baker University and Benedictine College, both founded before Kansas was even the state of Kansas. It includes the youngest college, Mid-American Nazarene in Olathe. It includes the first junior college, Central Christian College in McPherson. It includes the first college to admit women and African Americans, Friends University. So there's a lot of history in those 20 schools. Of those 20, 19 have a Christian faith in their history. The 20th is Cleveland University, which is one of the country's best chiropractic colleges in Overland Park. And I imagine today it's very busy at Cleveland University. They have the best sledding hill in Johnson County, which is an interesting bit of, I guess, irony for a chiropractic college to have a sledding hill right outside their building. But it is, those of you who have driven down 435, you drive right past their campus there in Overland Park, and probably right now there are a lot of kids on that hill. One thing that I will make sure language-wise, you'll hear me use independent, nonprofit, and private fairly interchangeably today. I mean those all to be the same, but I don't work on behalf of the for-profit colleges. So I don't, University of Phoenix, Rasmussen, who's here in town up the street, those are not the types of schools that I work on behalf of. Important to remember also, and something I think you heard from Dr. Flanders when he was here last week, is that the nonprofit colleges do not have a relationship directly with the Board of Regents. The Board of Regents doesn't govern us, they don't coordinate us, they don't regulate us. We are actually outside of their portfolio by statute from before there was a Board of Regents. So that's important to remember in a lot of what we talk about, but also to remember we work together. We appreciate the chance to be part of a shared ecosystem that's trying to advance Kansas, trying to advance higher ed in Kansas in a way that's cooperative and supports all students. So while we are separate, we are rowing in the same direction. Let me talk a little bit about enrollment. Despite, I think what you might have heard, probably just because we're not in the Board of Regents last week, in fact, our enrollment is up. Private colleges enrollment since the pandemic started is up. We have about 24,300 students this year. That's up a little bit. And collectively, we would represent about 12% of the college students in Kansas. Now, I want to draw your attention to page 3 of the fact book, and you'll see that while our enrollment is up across modalities, so it's up on main campus, it's up on online, the part that's the most exciting is you'll see in blue in that chart, which is our main campus enrollment. Our lifeblood is up 16% since the pandemic started. That's enormous for schools our size. Even our satellite campuses, which took a little bit of hit and have come back, are doing okay. But the main campus, that's our bread and butter. We're up, and that's pretty consistent across the private colleges in Kansas. That's really good news. Now, while I can't tell you proof of any of my hypotheses yet, but I have some hypotheses to why that might have occurred. One is, except for that brief period in March and April of 2020, when everybody shut down, we've been in person the whole time. None of our 20 schools shut down for any length of time. We have been playing sports since the get-go. So we didn't change our sports schedules. We were ready to go through the whole pandemic. A third might very well be that by being smaller and the nature of our missions, we were able to hold each other accountable a little better. We were able to look out for each other a little better. So that allowed us to navigate this in a way that a larger institution can't navigate because it's not fair to compare the two. The missions and the sizes are different. And a fourth might be that many of our schools are in rural communities. And as parents and students were thinking about where do I go to college, in this pandemic, it might have felt and looked safer to go to a place like most of our schools in Kansas than where they were. Again, those are hypotheses. I don't have proof, but we are up on main campus 16%, and something is driving that. I think an important part of that, and you can see on the bottom of page 2 of that fact book, and the call out sort of goes across the spine there to page 3, is that the majority of our growth is from out-of-state students. Private colleges, we are up 13% in out-of-state enrollment since fall of 19. That's a really big thing. And for us, it's very big because we are proud of our ability to not just recruit students from out of state, but keep them here once they graduate. We estimate, and tracking alumni is really hard, that about 40% of our out-of-state students stay in Kansas after they graduate. They come here from all over the country, and they come here to a lot of towns in Kansas, and they decide, hey, it's really great here. And they find a spouse, and they find a first job, and they find a church, and they find a community where they don't want to leave. So you go to places like Sterling and Hillsboro and Lindsborg, and you're going to see a lot of people who came here to go to private college in Kansas and just didn't go away. And that's great. So we're a big part of the brain gain efforts for Kansas because of that. So I talked a little bit about enrollment. Again, we're about 12% of the total enrollment in the state. Let me talk about outcomes. 12% of the students, but we graduate 19% of the bachelor's degrees in the state every year. We turn 12% into 19% every year. We've awarded 20% of master's degrees, and that's been pretty consistent over time as well. If you look on page 12 of that fact book, you're going to see some of the fields where I would say we punch above our weight. Let me give you an example. Nursing. Nearly 40% of the bachelor's degrees in nursing in this state come from private colleges. That is a big number for the schools we are. We are really invested in healthcare. 27% of all the bachelor's degrees in law enforcement and emergency management come out of our schools. Again, only 12% of the enrollment, but we are definitely punching above our weight in these fields. Obviously, we do great in teacher ed. always have been invested there, computer science programs, mathematics, some others as well. But at the core, these are not just careers, these are lives of meaning, and that's something that we really pride ourselves on. Affordability, I should talk a minute as well. I'm a champion, as you all know. Those of you who've been here for years know I'm shamelessly a champion for private colleges in Kansas, but I'm also proud of how affordable it is. Let me start by, if you'll note, let's see, I think it's on page, I'll come back. 40% of our students qualify for the Pell Grant. That's the federal low-income grant for college. That is pretty equivalent to the numbers that qualify from the community colleges and from the regions. We are not all that dissimilar from our peers in the public sector in terms of numbers of low-income students, numbers of Pell Grants we award. A quarter of our students who get one receive the full amount. What we really are proud of, though, is our students who get one graduate on time. We have, if you look at across all the 53 undergraduate degree institutions in the state, so all of us, the community colleges, the technical colleges, the Regents, Washburn, there are 53 of them. Of those, 13 graduate at least half of their Pell Grant recipients on time. Of those 13, 11 are KICA institutions. That is a testament to the work that KICA schools at private colleges put into personal attention to make sure that those students graduate. The sticker price, I know many of you want to know, average sticker price, so this is tuition and fees alone for an undergraduate, is about $29,000 a year in Kansas. That is the 14th consecutive year that in Kansas, our schools have been at least 20% below the national average. It continues to be a much better bargain to go to a private college in Kansas than almost anywhere else in the United States. I said sticker price. Most students don't pay that. 98% of students at a KICA school get at least some financial aid in grants and scholarships. 4/5 of which, 80% of which, comes from dollars we raise privately. Not from federal government dollars, not from state dollars, privately raised money. So after you take that into account, and you account for room and board, so housing and food and the rest, the average cost per year is about $16,000 to attend a private college. Now, that's still not cheap, but I would argue it's very competitive with national averages for the quality we provide. And I also would say that cost per year is not necessarily the best measure. We are very invested in making sure our students graduate in 4 years, not 5 or 6. So if you spend 4 years at a slightly more expensive school, but 5 years at a cheaper school, not only in that 5th year are you paying to go again, but you're not earning income. So very quickly, it adds up to be a better bargain to go to our schools if you're going to make sure you're invested in going and finishing in 4 years. Let me move away from those sort of profile pieces and talk about the budget, because we are independent colleges. And so the question might be, why am I here in front of you? We don't get any direct state dollars to our institutions. The only money that private colleges get from the state comes through the hands of the students who qualify for need-based grants and scholarships. That is mostly, and I should say all funded through the student financial assistance programs, which are in the Board of Regents budget itself. Shirley has already presented to you and explained, I think, a lot of those charts. Of those programs, the biggest one of note is the Kansas Comprehensive Grant. That program was created in 1999, designed to offer need-based aid, so students from households with economic need, to go to any public or private college in Kansas. We said it should be split and shared between those who go to public schools and those who go to private schools. On an annual basis, normally that's funded at about $16 million. We got some MOE money in it last year as a one-time bump, but pretty consistently over the years, it's been funded around 15 to 16 million. In the governor's fiscal year 23 request, it is at 16 million. About half of that money goes to private college students, about $8 million. So all the money you spend on higher ed in this building, $8 million goes to students who attend private colleges. That represents 1% of all the money you spend on higher ed. For that 1%, you get 20% of the degrees. So I'm pretty proud of our efficiency on that score. Let me talk then why the budget. The governor has made a request that we have some significant concerns about, and that is because the governor has requested a new $25 million need-based program only for public university students. We do believe and agree with the regents and the governor, we need to invest more in need-based aid. Kansas trails all of our neighbors. and the investments we've made in college affordability. But this is not the way to do it. We do not need to have sector-specific programs to support Kansans to go to college. We have an effective and efficient program already called the Comprehensive Grant. And we believe that that money should be put in the thing that works rather than creating a new program that is just for one sector instead of the others. The existing program is effective and efficient, and it has not been funded enough to fund more than 1 in 2 students since its existence, regardless of who is on the second floor.
Just a quick question. The 25 million that she put in for her budget this year.
That's I think it's called the Kansas Access Partnership.
And it's not a match.
It does have a match requirement as well, yes.
But the comprehensive grant does not have a match.
It does not.
But this one does.
That's correct.
And you're good with that. I mean, if we were to include the private colleges also.
I would argue that the structure of the match is also not a fair way to structure it. And the reason is it's designed as new endowed money match.
Is a new way?
Endowment funds match. And our colleges don't do endowments. We have small ones, but our efforts in fundraising are annual fundraising. So we raise money to make sure we can pay for operations and scholarships next year. We don't, the average endowment for private colleges is less than $15 million. We don't have big ones. So it is actually, as an endowment match, is sort of a secondary protection that we would not be able to really use those funds. So a match alone doesn't bother us. Endowment match very much would bother us.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
You anticipated my next point, which on that very thing. But I do want to come back to, we think it's right that we need to invest more in need-based aid. It's just this is not the right way to do it. If you want to move those funds into the existing efficient, effective program rather than create something new. Secondly, and I will be quick because I'm already past where I promised to do my time is, and you'll note in my testimony, I talk about this. There are not 3 engineering programs in the state that are accredited. There's a 4th one. It's called Benedictine College. They are ABET accredited and yet not included in the University and Engineering Initiative that you all reauthorized last year. That provides funding for faculty and students and equipment for growing the number of engineers in the state. Benedictine is very good at that. They're smaller, but they're here to contribute. And I want to point that out in part to say, when it comes to economic development and workforce development efforts that you all undertake, please do not forget that KICA schools want to contribute as well. We're happy to contribute. Don't leave us out in those efforts and thinking that as sort of we are a public-only higher ed state. So if there are ways to keep that in mind in the future, we would very much appreciate that. Madam Chair, let me stop there and answer questions.
I'm just going to ask you a quick question about the engineering scholarship.
Yes.
So you said a couple times right now that the only money that comes to us is through scholarships.
That's right.
But if we were to fund some engineering money, then you can't say that anymore. Is that right?
That'd be true.
Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure that I
Be true. I think I could.
Okay.
I could sleep. I could sleep.
You can sleep with that.
I
Okay.
could sleep.
You can sleep if you're here. Okay. Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here and for your presentation. Going back to the Kansas Access Partnership Grant, since that's not a model that would work for you, if, as we are starting to prepare and think about recommendations on Monday, if we were to use some of that 25 million to increase need-based aid in the comprehensive grant and leave some out, that it sounds like that match isn't a situation that works for the independent colleges. Is that something that you would be supportive of, even though the independents would not qualify for the new program, but we would significantly increase the comprehensive grant?
Without seeing it, so bear with me. So it was my initial response is no, we wouldn't. And it's a philosophical objection in that we should be investing in need-based aid and not creating a future where next year the funding requests are again about, do we fund public university need-based aid or private college need-based aid? This should be funding for all Kansans to stay in Kansas.
My hypothetical would be move 15 million into the comprehensive grant, which is split, and leave 10 million to leverage. There's a lot of conversations in this building that I often that resonate with me because a number of people in the building want us to go raise money to solve problems. And so whenever we're looking at programs that might leverage that private support, I always want to look at it. I think for our public foundations, new endowments work, right? But that's not a situation that works for you, I have to think about how that impacts them versus how a future potential project might benefit you separately.
Agree. And so I don't want to, I'm speaking very first blush, but my philosophical reason would be when, as a state, we should be investing in need-based aid for all students.
That philosophical, I would agree with that. I think Kansas lags so many of our states with need-based aid. So whatever we can do there is very, very important. I think side project, an additional project also is how do we leverage private support to really help our students through the process as well. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said that the independent colleges aren't governed by the Board of Regents or under the Board of Regents. There was a bill last year that came up and it was actually on the consent calendar, but Representative Riley and I were the only ones that voted against it because the way we interpreted the bill was that it would put the independent colleges under the Board of Regents if they chose to in order to get federal money. But I'm not sure if we interpret that correctly or if you had a different interpretation, but that's how we interpret it, and that's why we voted against it. I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
Representative, I think we might have to talk further. I'm not sure I know the bill you're referring to, and so I'd be happy to get you some feedback and further conversation.
That would be helpful because I know that Representative Fairchild asked me the same question and I did not know the answer. So it would be good to know. Okay, committee, other questions? Okay. Okay, Matt, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, we really appreciate it. And you've given us some good things to think about. Thank you. Okay, committee, we're not meeting tomorrow, but Monday is going to be, I sense that it's going to be a very exciting day. And so please do not wait till Monday to speak to Shirley or Jill about something that you would like to recommend. We'd like to have it go through them. I mean, we can talk about it here, but probably best practice is that we've got something actually written down that we can talk about. So, okay, we will be adjourned. You all have a great weekend. Be safe driving home and stay warm, and we will see everyone Monday. Be ready to work. We're adjourned.